Welcome to Headlines. This is David Lichtenstein. We have a wonderful Chabura this week. We're going to be speaking about dating and marriage. We're going to have from Detroit, Hagoyin Rabbi Sorcher, one of the great Rabbanim of America. He's going to be speaking about marrying for money in Halacha and Hashkafah. And then we will have from Beit Shemesh in Eretz Yisrael, a very well-known Shadchan, Mrs. Miriam Levitin. She will be speaking about what is the exact price for a good boy in Eretz Yisrael. Do people marry for money? She'll tell you the story of the pressure that parents are under because of the amounts they have to pay out. In fact, she'll tell us a story of a Shiur she read where the father of the Kala had a heart attack during the wedding because of the stress of these payments, marrying for money. We will then switch a little bit to a different topic. We will have Rabbi Friedman, and he will be speaking about both about money and he'll be speaking about dating. What is the Torah-dic outlook? What is the purpose of dating? How should dating be done? We will have from Queens, New York, a licensed clinical social worker, Michal Friedman. She will be talking about marriage today, the divorce rate, how the street, pornography, the internet has seeped into us, seeped into Klal Yisrael, how it is affecting marriage, and how to educate your children about intimacy. She will say some very surprising things. She will say, if you wait till your children are teenagers, and if you don't accept the responsibility, you leave it to the schools, you've waited too long, and you've taken something that's really your responsibility and made it the burden of the educators. So this is really a fascinating program. It's a relevant program, and I think a lot of it is much needed to be said. Before we begin our program, I want to speak about something that's sort of a little bit related. This week we're going to read about the Egel Hazov, Ayasu Egel Masecha. They made an Egel, which was Masecha, I guess, means a pesel, but it also means a Mesach, means a Mesach HaMavdil, something to obscure, to cloud. And what does the Chazal say in Medrash Rabbah? It says over here in B'Shalach Lamed, it says, the Chet of the Egel is forever. It doesn't go away. Zera Kadosh says the same thing. So my question is, how is the Chet of the Egel relevant to us here in Tafshin Ayin Tes 2019? How does the Egel affect me and you? So let me share with you a thought. And I think it's something that's, there's much been spitting about Harbe Joy Nishbach, but I'm going to say I think it's a little bit of a different twist on it. Everything in life has something that's a little bit of a perversion of itself. So let me give you a few examples. One of the most important things in life is friendship. Friendship. Without friendship, we would die. The only time in the Torah it says, Loi toiv is heyos adam levadei. A person, we are pack animals. We need friendship. I have a friend. He works on Wall Street. He says, I don't have time for friends. He says, my only friend is my dog. He's right. What do they say? Dog is man's best friend. But I ask you, is a dog really a friend? Does a dog ever tell you, excuse me, Tatala, I think you put on a little weight. Maybe you're not eating so healthy. Or maybe you're not treating your mother the way she should. Or if you have an issue that you have to discuss, can you discuss it with your dog? So it's maybe not exactly man's best friend. There's marriage, intimacy, right? Again, a person, matzah isha, matzah tov, right? It's a zivug. And yet, you have people. Again, I work in a big fry world. I have people that they don't get married. What do they have? They either have escorts, pornography, etc. So we have love. It's the counterfeit version of it, right? Even in charity, I met somebody. He was telling me his favorite charity, a non-Jewish person, is the Save Venice Foundation. They make great balls, and what's their goal? The sea is rising to capture Venice. Save Venice. So I made a little bit of a face, like it's not a charity that interests me. So he says, you're Orthodox. All you're interested in is Jewish causes. And I said to him, a few years ago, I had the honor. I sat next to Warren Buffett by dinner. And he was talking to me about charity. So he said, what are some of his charities? He says, in Africa, He says there's no clean water in most of the villages, so they take water from the rivers. It's full of parasites. Kids get eaten by crocodiles. So he said, what was his goal? To have running clean water in every single village in Africa. He says it costs around $5,000 for a village. It's powered by solar. And he says it adds 10 years to the life of every individual. So if you have a village of 200 people, one $5,000 well adds 2,000 years of life, of healthy life. So I turned to this guy, I said, that's charity. I say, Save Venice. That's a counterfeit charity. It's coming from maybe a similar emotion. Some places started, but it's a counterfeit, right? You have nutrition. You have junk food, right? You could learn a real parnasa. You could do day trading. Everything that's real has a counterfeit. When the ultimate truth comes to the world, what is that? Kabbalah Satira, the Luchas Sabris. What comes right after it? Elohim Acherim, the counterfeit. The counterfeit. You had some type of Osiris, you turned it, you wasted it for some bluff, for a hoax, for fake news. It's a very relevant message. We live in an Instagram generation. People running, putting pictures of themselves, the best moment of their life. They took 1,000 pictures. They found one moment where they looked fantastic. That's who they are. It's bluff. You don't look that way. The family doesn't look this way. Elamai, what is it? Some counterfeit version, always trying to show the world something that is not. So the Luchais is really the Luchais is the story of don't fool yourself with the counterfeit. Go for the real thing. Somebody told me a humorous story. It's a joke, but I think it's powerful. There's a paper in Eretz Yisrael, I forgot what it's called, maybe Erev Shabbos or something like that. It's a magazine all about pictures of, Rabbanim making Havdalah, breaking the Challah, lighting the menorah, holding a shofar. It's an entire. So you have this Shana Yidala, he has a shul, he has an olam. He was never in this paper. So he calls up the magazine, he says, I would like to be in the paper too. So the guy says, what do you mean? He says, Chanukah is coming. Zois Chanukah, when I light the 8th candle and I'm surrounded, there's a big olam. Why don't you send your photographer to take a picture and meet us here? So the guy from the paper, he swears. He says, listen, I only have one photographer. Zois Chanukah, he's going to the real tzaddikim, he can't come to you. Zois Chanukah, he doesn't have, that day is taken. So this guy gets very upset. He says, so what, you could never have me there? So the magazine editor, owner thinks for him. He says, I have a psanetza for you. It's 2 weeks before Hanukkah, and my photographer has nothing to do today. Why don't you get tonight an olam, bring in the menorah, fill it with oil for all 8 days. You'll put on your big day Shabbos, and you'll light the menorah, and my photographer will have the time to take a picture, and we'll publish it in 3 weeks. As Zois Hanukkah, we'll publish it then. So the guy says, wonderful idea. So they send out the photographer 2 weeks before Hanukkah. He brings in the ganze olam, and he's the beautiful menorah. And they put lekach, honey cake on the table, and the photographer is about to take the picture. He lights, and just when he's about to take the picture, something falls down. So the sheni bends down under the table to pick it up, and he's about to, get up quickly. So the photographer he doesn't want to waste it. So the photographer says, no, wait a minute. So the guy looks. He's under the table. He says, I could already take a picture for Bedikas Chametz also. Right? What does that mean? Everything in life has the real, and it has the counterfeit. Even in tzaddikim, there's Er L'Chidin, and there's people who dress up like Er L'Chidin. The story of the Egel is, where in my life am I settling for fool's gold? Where is there some negias that I have that maybe, I mixed up, kaviyachal, right, with the layilacha chas v'shalom. I think it's a very powerful and relevant message. The Torah is la'ad le'olme elamim kol gadol v'layasif. We have to look in every parsha. Where is it something that relates to my life today? Before we go to our guests, I'm going to ask 2 riddles this week. One riddle, it says, V'hadlakas hamanoira. What does it say? V'yikchu elecha shemin zayizach kasus lamoyer. So what does the Rambam say in Perek Tes of Bais Hamikdash Halacha Zayin? He says a zor could also light the menorah. Hadlakas haneres ksheira bezarim. He says, therefore, if the Kohen took the menorah outside of the Mishkan or outside of the Bais Hamikdash, the zor could be madlik it, right? And I guess afterwards he would bring it back in where it belongs. So we'll chayrit tzedava pella. Because what's the halacha? By Neiris Chanukah, we hold leitam the yom hadlaka is a mitzvah, right? So let's say you would light the menorah in a place where it's puzzle. You would light it l'mayla michaf if you hold that l'mayla michaf is not good, right? Some place where it's not right, where if you need it by Pesach Beisai before Al Shulchan was mutter, and you would do it in a room, in a closed room, and then you would put it outside. What's the halacha? It's no good. Why? Because hadlaka, the ikka mitzvah is hadlaka, and hadlaka has to be in a makam kosher. So bazoi, that the menorah has to be in the Bais Hamikdash. How could the Rambam say, take it outside so that the Zohar could light it and bring it back? The Zohar lights it outside because the Zohar is not allowed to go into the Mikdash. We hold hadlaka is a mitzvah. How are you going to be yaitza mitzvah's menorah? This is a fabulous kasha. It's not my kasha, it's the Minchas Chinuch, Tzadik Ches, Tes, but it's something that's certainly worth discussing. Here's one more shaila. This is for Kisisa. It says, Vayehi beredes Moshe me'ar Sinai, u'shnei luchos eidos biad Moshe. Moshe came down from the mount, right? And luchos biad, what does Rashi say? It was Yom Kippur. The luchos achroines were in Yom Kippur. Chayrit tzedava pella. On Yom Kippur, just like on Shabbos, Ein bein, what does the Mishnah say? Ein bein Yom Kippurim l'Shabbos al shezem yisasi b'dei one is karas, one is b'dei adam, right? But avada haitzah, carrying outside. You're not allowed to go outside to carry B'Shus HaRabim, B'Shus HaYachid, B'Shus HaRabim on Yom Kippur, right? Without an Erev, that is. So how was Moshe able to take the luchos from the mount down to the We paskin in our Chaim Tafrei Shur Aleph that there's a din of haitzah on Yom Kippur, so the har was Gavoya Yud V'Rachav Dalet, so it has a din of B'Shus HaYachid. And the Midbar, when Klal Yisrael were in the Midbar, had a din of B'Shus HaRabim, like the Gemara in Shabbos says of Vava Bais. How was Moshe allowed to take the luchos from the mount down to the since it was on Yom Kippur? He should have had to wait till Matzah Yom Kippur. Those are our two riddles. Let's go to our wonderful guests. We have the honor of having with us on the phone from Detroit, Michigan, Harav Hagoyin Rabbi Sorcher, Rav and Poisik in Detroit. He's on Shas Illuminated. He's one of their leading Rabbanim. Welcome, Rabbi.
Yeah, good.
So, Rabbi, there was recently somebody sent me an article that they had actually a program in Eretz Yisrael where they had Bachrim speaking, and it caused a little bit of an outrage to the various reporters, etc., where they were each talking about their value. One said, look, I'm a $600,000 bacha. And you had one Rosh Yeshiva, a parent called up. They said, you want 150,000 bacha or you want a 400,000 bacha? What do you want for your daughter? What type of bacha? So my question is the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Bais talks about Hanoisi Isha L'Shem Mama in the Gemara in Kiddushin and Dafayin, marrying for money. Give us a little bit of a halachic perspective, hashkafic and halachic perspective.
Well, halacha, the Rama says there in Siman Bais that if the woman is an appropriate woman to marry, even though the money is a major consideration, that's not considered Noisi Isha L'Shem Mama, and you can't say halachically that that's aser. But he also does say that it's very inadvisable to make an issue of it, and he says that anything which the woman or the woman's father offers you should be accepted generously. That's the words of the Ramah. I remember there's a letter in the Igros Chazon Ish.
But respectfully, doesn't the Goyin argues, right? Or the Goyin argues and he learns different shot in the Ramah. In other words, he seems to be saying that the Ramah in the beginning paskins like the Rivash, But he says the Ramah fears ice. He says not like the Rivash, but like the Orchos Chaim, that Hanois Ishul Shemamein is a davar maguna, unless you would have married her not for the mom, and that's how the Goyen learns. So it does seem to be a machlekes. Listen to the washing of the Aruch HaShulchan here. It says im nois ishik sherer l'shemamein she'ul malei mamayna hayanois acheres. Right, that's how. So this is the machlekes. He learns you're allowed to, and the Goyen learns you're not allowed to.
But I do remember halacha l'maisa that even if money is one of the considerations, and like you said, and perhaps without that consideration, you might not have married her. That's not a halachic problem. It's not called neisi ishul l'shem mammon. That's the psak halacha.
But it seems that the Welt certainly is not machmer like this Goyen.
Yeah. Halacha l'maisa, and that's definitely also true that it's a time-honored tradition for hundreds of years to take the money into consideration, even by the biggest gedolei Torah of Klal Yisrael. Even if there is perhaps a shita not that way, it's definitely not halacha l'maisa.
But let me tell you, somebody sent me a kol koira from Rav Steinman, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was hanging all over the Rabbi Shal Kol Bnei Hagoyla Mereinu Rabbeinu and Rabban Leishnaim. Here's the quote: Misha Ma'oided Bacha Lidrash Dira Hareze Rasha Marusha Mahu writes Shehoire Habanis Yamusu, and we're going to put this on the site, which seems to be an.
I'll explain that. I'll explain it.
Yeah.
It's not a steer at all to what I'm saying. I'm going to explain when it's a problem, when it's not a problem. You know what I'm saying? But I still strongly say, as far as halacha is concerned, if someone takes the money into consideration, that's not considered neis ishul l'shem mammon, and in many cases, it's not considered wrong at all. In other words, let's say you have somebody that wants to learn in Koil, or even if not, even if let's say you have somebody that wants to continue going to college and work to become a doctor, or whatever the case may be, and would need support at least initially for the family, and he doesn't feel that he'd be able to get married without the wife's family giving them support, or at least for a few years, and that's the responsible thing to do. And the wife's family has no problem doing it. They're interested in this idea. They want that's the desire to support the young couple, whether they want to learn the first few years or more than the first 3 years, whether they want to get established in a career, whether they want to get established in a business, whatever the case may be. And that's his consideration. He says, now, therefore, if I get married to this woman, I'll be able to have the parnasa needs, at least initially, until I'm able to establish myself. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that whether there is a shita or whatever it is, but
let me just
even Hashkafah, there's nothing wrong with such an approach.
I mean, the two who would seem to argue then is him and the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer writes that similarly, he says that anybody who marries for money, the Chassam Sofer says same thing like the Goyen, has a din of banim shem huganim. Also, unless you would have otherwise married. So we have two outlier opinions. Let me bring a few other. Rabbeinu Yaina, this is Lashon Rabbeinu Yaina. Ubedeiris halalu, asher akala noisenes lechasin, hu davar hagoyrim kama rois, ki yavayu kama b'nei adam, v'lei sasig adam lahasiya b'nei seyem, ubezeh yimatu v'yashaychu. Right? He says, even to give a little bit to the chasin, is a davar hagoyrim kamarois, the lashon of the Rabbeinu Yaina, right? I'm just pointing out that there is another opinion, and
was what he held, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, so in the case that we were discussing, where the boy says, "Look, I like this girl, but the other girl who I'm with, but she's going to give money. You hold that historically, that's been okay." Right? Now, what do you say to this minig in Eretz Yisrael, particular in Eretz Yisrael, because I have friends who live there, that they eat themselves up because the only way to do a shidduch there is if you're a girl and you want to get a good bacher is there's the $600,000 bacher. I think he was a very expensive one. Then there's the $400,000 bacher, and then you could end up with a psavgos stam bacher for $150,000, right? So my point is, what do you think of that?
Well, it depends who's asking the shaila. You know, if a father would ask me, should I be maftiach money which I really have no way of getting, which would be causing extreme anguish to my life to get that type of money? Should I do that for my daughter shidduch? I would say absolutely not.
Yeah, so what should she do? And the father's going to respond. So what he's going to do? He's going to end up with $150,000 with a simple bacha.
So if the pshat is what you're interested in a good shidduch is that you want covered.
Not covered. No, his daughter wants a very chashuva boy, and the chashuva boy wants $400,000.
Why do you want a chashuva boy? Why do you want a chashuva boy?
He's a boy. He wants to learn for 10 years.
Because you're chashuv, and past like this, not to have a chashuva boy.
No, why say that? No, but
if you want to have a successful marriage to somebody who is an Eved Hashem,
right?
Then the Eivishter will make sure you go within your means, you do what you're comfortable, and I'm telling you, the Eivishter will send you the shidduch that is perfectly, that would have a nice, successful marriage with a bacher that is an Eved Hashem, a Yerei Shemayim, and even if that's what you need and that's what your daughter's for, even someone that's a Talmud Chacham, or at least a Ben Torah.
So she wants L'Shem Shemayim, the biggest Talmud Chacham, and the biggest, or one of the top 5 Talmudei Chachamim in one of these top yeshivas, and this guy wants a dira for $400,000. This has happened to friends of mine. And they meant L'Shem Shemayim, not what other people would say. And they go, and they have a choice. They can marry a boy who's not such a big Balkishrin, who's in the bottom half of the share, not in the top quartile or top 5%, and they could not give a dira, give $150,000 for a dira, or they could get the top 3 or 4 or 5 quartile, and it's $400, $500. That guy in the program said he wants $600. How would you advise this father if he can't afford it?
If he can't afford it, and it would cause a major problem to his menuchas nefesh, to his avodas Hashem, to his simchas ha'chaim, you should definitely not do it. Period.
And what would you say is a boy allowed to say for himself, listen, that's their right, but since I'm the best bacher in Yeshiva X, or one of the top few, I'm allowed to say I want $600,000 because I know there's going to be people who they'll sell their house, they'll mortgage their house, they'll mortgage their everything to be able to get for their daughter Mr. $600,000. Would you say he's doing an appropriate or inappropriate thing?
The derech klal inappropriate. For 2 reasons. First of all, if the pshat is that he wants to get the money that he needs for his parnasa, so that's appropriate. That's what he wants, and taking into account who the shidduch is and how much the father-in-law is able and willing to support the couple, and that's necessary for his parnasa, it's appropriate. If what he wants is extra luxuries, something which he doesn't need for parnasa, so it's not appropriate. You know, if Yitaka wants to be a big Talmud Chacham, so again, he should, part of being a big Talmud Chacham, part of being the Grace again, is to not be shayef after Gashmis. You don't need mamish to pass from Malach Teicha like the Mishnah describes. But Al Kapanim, the Mishnah's point is, he should live simply. And that's what he should. And the truth is that a lot of these people, it's not even a question of Taivas HaMammon. The question is more Gaiva, the Taivas HaKavod. And the pshat is by him, he wants the kavod of saying that he got such and such money. And Gaiva is certainly a tremendous problem. And such a thing is definitely wrong.
So let me ask you another situation.
That's the first reason.
Yeah, okay.
The second reason is that if your shrine needs the money and you don't, so what does it make sense to take money from someone who needs it and give it to someone who doesn't need it? It's not a sensible thing. It's not, it just seems very wrong.
So let me ask you
what you're saying, if the chat is he wants to get married the dafka to someone who's very, very wealthy, who would want the dafka to be mafaza huge amounts of money, then you only have the first problem. But if he doesn't want the wealthy guy because he doesn't want such a balabatish family, he wants the dafka, the Talmud Chacham, and he wants that the person should have very serious problems getting him the money, and he doesn't even need the money. That's the second problem.
But no, let me give a less extreme case. I have a friend who you probably know. He's a very big Talmud Chacham. He's a real tzaddik. He's a Maggid Shiur in Eretz Yisrael. He's a very famous, a well-known name, right? Mm-hmm. And his daughter wanted to get married. She wanted a top boy. And he had to buy for the boy a dira, not a fancy dira. It was 150, 200,000, like a minimal dira in Yerushalayim. Okay. And he said to me that he hasn't slept in 6 months because he doesn't know how he's going to pay for it. And he took chayvis, and now he doesn't know how he's going to pay the chayvis. So here's my question. When the boy wants the dira, he doesn't want, we're not talking about a fancy multiplex dira. We're talking about a simple dira, right? The boy wants the dira because he wants to sit and learn. Mm-hmm. The cost is his in-law's health. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, you say, look, the boy doesn't want anything fancy. He just wants a dira to be able to come home. It's a 2-bedroom dira, to set up the minimal dira, but it's still 200,000. On the other hand, it's at the expense, mamish, of the brias, of the health of the father of the girl. So how do we look at that?
Well, it depends again, depending who's asking the shayla. If the father would ask me the shayla, I would tell him he's doing the wrong thing, period. Father is doing the wrong thing. And you shouldn't say to himself, no, it's not, it's society is terrible, and the system is very, very bad, but there's nothing I can do. Yes, there is something you could do. You could say that you're going to get a shidduch with any means, period. And there's no good reason why not. That's the first debate. That's about the father. About the bacher, there, again, about the first taina that I said, you don't really have that in this case. If the bacher is taka, a very sincere bacher, and all he wants is to be able to have the pranasa that he needs. But about the second taina, now again, the second taina, in a case where he actually does need this, it's something that he does need. It's not like sometimes you have someone, saying in America it's more, it shows the deer. In America it's more that the guy has to give $1,000 a month for 5 years, and again, they're warned, otherwise you don't get a good shidduch. Okay, so he's giving $1,000 a month. Now, his daughter actually is working for a job and she's getting $20,000. And the koil is also paying $10,000. And all they need is about $2,000 a month. So they're actually putting away money or spending it on things that they don't need, or whatever the case may be. Besides the fact that they happen to have a bank account from money that the girl made before in the chasana present. And the father in question, he's on time for Shabbos. And he decided he's going to have to take another job in order to afford the $1,000 a month that he's mechayev. Right? And such a thing. Now, sometimes a little bit, the chassan is not the one at fault, and this is what the Rav Steinman letter is saying. Sometimes the chassan actually doesn't mind at all not taking the $1,000. He actually feels a little bit uncomfortable, but his Rosh Yeshiva insisted to his father that you cannot let this guy get married unless they give at least $1,000 a month for 5 years. And his father, Yeshiva said that. So what can I do? But it's absurd. What should instead be is that, again, if the parents of the kala are interested that they learn in koil, which is a very good thing, they should say that he'll make sure that they have the pranasa that they need. But the mechayev a specific sum, whether they need it or not, is particularly if you don't have it, is ridiculous. And the point what I'm saying is that the parents of the kala should not be saying, well, what can I do? That's the system. They should be saying, no, I'm going to live my life just like everything else. I do responsibly. I have financial responsibility. I make sure that I do what I need within my means. There should be no difference.
So now let's go back to the case in Eretz Yisrael that I spoke to. You said the parents shouldn't be doing it. What about the boy? Should he feel guilty for doing it?
Well, sometimes it's not his fault completely. Sometimes his parents did it without him having much input. You know what I'm saying? And when it comes to an apartment, sometimes there's not that much he could do, especially with the evidence. If it's a monthly schlim, he could simply not take it. But if it's though sometimes it's a little sticky, because sometimes this chayvus would have seemed to be to, or at least with his father. But if he would come to me with a question, try to work out the situation. But in this case, it is a little bit harder because the apartment is there, the apartment is paid for. You know what I'm saying? There's not that much. But if he's the one, then it's just done. In other words, if he was a little more sophisticated when he was going out, he could. I would think it would be appropriate for a bacher to tell his parents that I do not want a shidduch where my father-in-law would be under such extreme pressure to keep the parnasa. Let's try to get the parnasa that I need in ways that won't be causing such pain and anguish to someone else, particularly my beloved father-in-law, whoever he might be.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very appropriate thing for a bach and shidduchim to say. Just sometimes they don't realize.
We have on the phone with us from Eretz Yisrael, from Beit Shemesh, Miriam Levitin, who's a Shadchan for 13 years in Beit Shemesh. She, can I know her as a mother, a grandmother? She went to BJJ either the same year as my wife or a year after or before. We can't track it down. But she's a Talmidah of Rebbetzin David. Welcome, Mrs. Levitin.
Hi.
So my question is, what is it like to meet, what is it like when a boy, a girl, you read a shidduch, how important is money? What are the demands? And just give us something from the front lines.
Okay, so in Eretz Yisrael in particular, money is a very important part. If a boy wants to be a long-term learner, then money is probably one of the main parts of the shidduch. Shidduchim don't even get to first date if the money is not resolved in advance. The money is discussed in two parts in a shidduch in Eretz Yisrael. People first talk money for an apartment, and then money for the wedding and setup. It's two separate inyanim. So when people say, I'm giving 400,000 shekel, they mean for an apartment. That's the language. That is the minimal amount to even get onto any list. The prices go up depending on the yeshiva. Prestigious yeshivas ask for more money. The price tags.
Okay, wait, go so fast. Give me an example. Like 400,000 would be for what type of yeshiva? Give me some.
It would be for the basic yeshivas, not brand name yeshivas. The Hamonam. A boy who's going to learn for a couple of years, who's not the Spitz, who's just a nice boy who's going to learn from a more, Pashut family is going to ask for that.
And what's in brand name yeshiva would be like what?
Would be Hebron, Tifrach, Panovich. Those are the three main names that people know. Wolfson is in there nowadays, and Kaplan, they call it, from Naftali Kaplan. And there's a few other, Orchos Torah and Bnei Brak, Rav Steinman's, Tzal's Yeshiva.
I'm curious, why isn't Brisk on this list?
Brisk is more of an American yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. That's how it's considered.
So let's play this out, Ms. Levitin. I'm a parent. I call up and I say, I have a daughter, and I'm looking for a boy from a top yeshiva. Hebron, Tifrach, Panovich. By the way, are they all the same? Is it pretty much, or are they ranking?
No. They're totally. They may all be the same in price range, but they're very different kind of yeshivas.
So let's talk price range. So my daughter wants a boy from one of the top, and you say the top are Hebron, Tifrach, Panovich, Wolfson, Kaplan, and Rav Steinman. Those are basically equal in price, right?
Yeah, probably.
So what do I have to give so that my daughter could go out with a boy from one of these places?
Well, somewhere between 800,000 and $1 million shekel.
And now if I say but I can't afford that. 800, let's say $1 million shekels easy. It's around $350,000. Let's say I say
Right.
I just don't have $350,000. I mean, your average salary in Israel is probably, I don't know, what is your average salary? 30 or 40,000. So it would take me 10 years, assuming I didn't spend anything on anybody else and I paid no taxes, to marry off my daughter. I don't have the $1 million shekel,
Right.
which I imagine most people don't. How do you respond to that?
I respond that there are many good boys in many yeshivas, and who said you need the top? Who said the top is even good for you?
When you say the top, you mean the top yeshiva or the top boys?
Yes and yes. The top boy in the top yeshiva, who said that's good for you? You need the right person. You don't, people are looking for the top of people with money. Real people don't look for that.
But so I say, okay, so let's play this out. I'm going to be the father of the girl, and I say my daughter is really wonderful, and she wants a boy who's going to be a mamish, a goyin, and a lamdin, but I only have, I don't know, $50,000, which is for me, savings of 10 years. What would you say?
I would say we got to be realistic about what's available out there. There's a lot of good girls. And there's a lot of good boys, but the top boys are going to be the ones that are bought for a lot of money. And then there's a lot of very good boys that may be matim, so maybe we should look for what makes sense for what you have to offer, because that's what shidduchim are based on, unfortunately.
So she won't get a top boy. She'll get if I have 50,000, she'll get a level of dollars, which is around 175,000 shekels. She'll end up with like a tier 2 boy.
Or a boy from a family that has no money and is not demanding because they have a lot of daughters to marry off, and they're not being playing the game and how do you call that? Being double-faced. They're being real. You get those types.
So I'm saying if I have
an American boys who don't ask for it.
So if I have 200,000 shekel, I could end up with a tier B boy, but I won't end up with a tier 1 boy. And
makes a boy tier 1 or tier 2 anyway? It's what's right for the person, right? It's the game is a little not real to real life. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about people here.
What does make a tier 1 boy? You said for a tier 1 boy I need him.
To me, or what's my team for your daughter? It doesn't necessarily mean the top yeshiva.
The boy who wants the $1 million shekel, what is it? What are his qualifications that he can get $1 million shekel?
He's made a good name for himself. He's a masmid. He's smart. He probably comes from a great family. Probably has some yichus thrown in, and I would say he probably has a smidgen of gaiva thrown in there, and his parents have a smidgen of gaiva, and that's what I would say.
Now, let's say, so do most people encourage parents, look, you can only afford $50,000, which is a lot of money in Eretz Yisrael. It's a lot of money in America, too, $175,000. Let's say I don't have $50,000. Let's say I have, I don't know, I could pay for the wedding. I have $10,000 or $20,000. Can I marry my daughter off? And what could she get?
Right. Look, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mezaveg, and we all believe it. You're not going to go looking in the top brand name yeshivas for the top boy, because that's not realistic. But you can look for a very good boy in, and not a brand name place.
Okay. Now, the who's driving this? Is it the parents of the boys? Is it the boys? Is it the Rosh Yeshivas? Who's behind this?
I believe it's the Rosh Yeshivas, because I have spoken to parents who don't believe in this, but my son says as Rosh Yeshiva said, and therefore we can't tell him all of a sudden to stop listening to Rosh Yeshiva just because he got to Shidduchim. We've been telling him his whole life, you got to listen and get a Rebbe and follow your Rebbe, and now we're going to tell him you don't. So we need the money, and I get this on a daily basis.
So these are the Rosh Yeshivas of the Chevron, Tifrach, Panovich, Wolfson, Kaplan.
Right.
But you also have Rav Steinman. Now, I saw a Kol Korah from Rav Steinman, where he writes, it was plastered all over, that a Rebbe or Rosh Yeshiva, I forgot the exact word, I could look it up, we'll post it online, who
I remember, who
pushes
man's
the
money
boys
is going to go to Gehenna or something.
Yeah, but you have his boys in the yeshiva asking for that money too. Isn't that
definitely. So
what happened over there?
I don't know. I don't believe in Pashkevilim. They get printed a dime a dozen with anyone's name signed on it. I don't believe in those things.
Okay, now, when you talk to the Rosh Yeshivas and you'll say something like, I have a friend, he's one of the most special young Levitin in Eretz Yisrael.
Mm-hmm.
He had to marry off his daughter, and he told me that he's physically sick, and his wife told me he has ulcers, he doesn't sleep night, and he only has a few kids, to have to pay for his daughter's dira. How do the boys and the girl and their parents and the Rosh Yeshivas, who are demanding these things of the girls' families, how do they live with themselves? I mean, it seems
I would love to know the answer to that question, honestly.
It seems to go the hepech of the whole Torah. Like the whole Torah is, v'hafta l'recha kamoicha, madalach sani l'chavrach le'savid.
I can't agree with you more.
So how do they let somebody, and this is a very
I'm going to tell you a first-hand story, because this is so true what you're saying. I was at a chasna of a shidduch I made, and the father had a very hard time coming up with the money, and during the first dance, he collapsed on the dance floor. I was there. Hatzalah came. He had a heart attack. Okay? They whisked him away. Baruch Hashem, he survived. He's fine. It was, he was a healthy person, and it was, I guess a milder heart attack. He's in the hospital a few days. He came out. He's fine. But this is the middle of his daughter's chasana. And this is not, I happen to have witnessed this firsthand. You see this on the news on a regular basis. But I was there, and it was my shidduch. And I know what went into the negotiations. So I know why he had a heart attack.
What went into the negotiations?
He was promising amounts of money that he had no idea where he was getting them from, because he wanted to marry off his daughter to this good boy.
So I have a question for you. If you have a quote-unquote good boy who knows he's marrying a girl, and when he sits by the Shabbos table, he could look at his in-laws' faces and he basically almost killed them. Right. Isn't it an oxymoron to call that a good boy?
I think so.
Like, what kind of...
How do we change the system is the question.
But I have a different question. My question is, what kind of godless could come out of cannibalism? I'm an Orthodox Mitzuyan, I'm a cannibal. Who did you eat? Oh, I ate up my in-laws, limb by limb. What kind of godless could come from that?
The father-in-law wanted this. He wanted it. He would have done it for any boy. So the boy's probably feeling, look, it wasn't me, would have done it for someone else. It wasn't really me. He was doing it because he wanted to marry his daughter. They can warp the whole picture for themselves, to live with themselves. They have to live with themselves. So.
And have you asked this to the Rosh Yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael?
I once went to Rosh Yeshiva and I said to him, why are you doing this? You know the parents aren't even demanding it. Why are you demanding it for them? And he said to me, I want this boy to stay in learning. And I said to him, is this the only way to keep a boy in learning? He says, if he doesn't have the dira and he has the chayvus on his head, he'll be running around to gemachim with chayvus. He has no way to learn. He has no yishuv adas. So, I've never sat and learned Gemara. Baruch Hashem, don't plan to.
Do you need a million?
I don't know what it takes, Apparently it takes yishuv adas, not chayvus on your head, so...
It's an interesting debate. In other words, I want to become a gadol, but I have to do it at the cost of my in-laws' health.
In-laws' health, and how about the wife's health? The wife is working like a dog, having the babies, running the home, doing everything. The in-laws is the first step. The system is tough. It's tough, and I don't know the answers. As a Shadchan in Eretz Yisrael, I do the financial negotiations before they go out, and I told the boy's father that the girl's side gives very nicely. He has nothing to worry about. It's going to be fine. He's married off 3 daughters. This is the 4th. He has nothing to worry about. They're all well settled. He helps them. He takes care of them, and he can afford to. And they went out 3 times. They're ready to get engaged. The fathers finally sat down to hash out the details. And I got a call after that from the boy's father basically telling me the shidduch is off. I was in shock. I'm like, what happened? He said, you think 600,000 shekel is a nice amount of money? I said, it's huge. He goes, I'm only giving 200. And apartments are 1,200,000. So we're missing another 400, and he's not willing to give it. So I'm not willing for my son to have a mashkanta. The shidduch is off. And the shidduch was promptly off, even though the kids are ready to get engaged. This is real. This is a first-hand story that I was involved in.
And who did the boy?
That's how real it is. They both Baruch Hashem married to different people. Yes, yeah.
He found somebody who was willing to pay up.
Who was willing to pay up, and the girls Baruch Hashem happily married also.
Do you have girls or boys who can't get married and they just stay single because of money?
I have a 31-year-old bacher who is considered a Mitzian and a masmid and bright and personable, who is refusing to get married until he gets the right package. And I find out that you could have been married for 6 or 7 years already and had your friends have 6, 7 kids. Is this allowed?
It's not allowed. Halachically, it's not allowed. We'll put the Mara Makaimis online.
And his answer was, I got to be able to learn. I'm single, I'm sitting and learning. If I get married and have no money, I'll have to go to work. What am I going to do? His parents can't give a penny.
And what, do you have girls who can't? But I think this is his choice. Do you have girls who can't get married because their parents can't write the checks?
Yes. Yes, there are definitely girls of 26, 27, 28 who are working hard and saving every penny to be able to finally say they have enough to get married. Yes, it does exist, and they're holding out for those really big masmidim. Yes, it does exist. I could think of probably a dozen of them. Mm-hmm.
How do the parents pay for it? Like, what is the average salary in Eretz Yisrael?
Look, a lot of these girls, their fathers have been avreichim for 30 years. They're making about 2,000 shekel a month, the fathers, and the mothers may be making, let's say, a really good salary, like 8,000 shekel a month. You know, they barely make it. People don't make it through the month, but they need to marry off their kids.
So let's say you have a family, they're making 1,000 shekel a month.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say they decide they're going to eat nothing, and they're going to feed, not spend any money on food, clothing. Let's say they're not going to pay any bills. So 10,000 into a million, right, means that it's going to take them 100 months of this, which is 9 years of eating nothing, just to marry off this one kid. Now, the average family that you deal with is probably more than 1 or 2 kids, no?
Yeah, how about 10 or 12? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So 10 kids means that for every child's chasana, they need 10 years of spending nothing, living on mun. If they have 10 children, it means they have 100 years, which is obviously beyond absurd. In fact, if you take the 10,000 and they're not making it through the month, they have this. So where are they coming up with this 200, 400, 600, 800, a million shekels?
Okay, so a lot of people were given the diras to them from parents or in-laws or whatever, or however, diras used to be cheaper, their parents had money, however they got them. People who own their own diras are now taking out mashkantas on them to marry off their kids. So if they get lucky, they can take out private loans from family members, or gemachim that give them, very, interest-free, or they take out mashkantas with tremendous interest. And they have to pay it back every month. So they're running from gemach to gemach to pay one gemach to the next gemach to the mashkanta.
But my question is, if a guy has a dira and it's $500,000 or $200,000 or $500,000, he could take out one mashkanta of $300,000, $350,000 to pay for one of his 10 kids. How does he do with the next 9 kids?
So there are people who sell their apartments and downsize. There are people in Benita.
Wait. So if he sold his dira, he can now buy 2 kids' diras.
Right.
And not the best ones. These are only the 750 or the 800,000 boys, not the million. What does he do for the next 8 kids?
It's believe me, there's no answers. I'm going to tell you right now, there are no answers b'derech hateva. There's a lot of nisim and niflos in Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to talk about average people now, not about the top brand names that I don't know what they do and how they get that money, honestly. It's usually Rosh Yeshivas who pay these fees and take these bachrim. I think they fundraise well or they have rich talmidim. I don't know exactly. But I know when someone is telling me they have a lot of money, I know they're going to tell me they're a Rosh Yeshiva or Rosh Kolo afterwards. It's like guaranteed. It's like the joke in my house.
Why is that a joke? Explain the joke. I'm not getting it.
Because if someone's a doctor, a dentist, or a lawyer, they're not giving me that kind of money, only if they're Rosh Yeshivas and Rosh Kolel. So,
where did they come up with it?
I said they must have rich talmidim they fundraise from. I'm assuming they do good fundraising. Maybe to qualify as a good Rosh Yeshiva, you need to be a good fundraiser, so you know how to fundraise for yourself. I don't know. That's what I'm assuming.
So you're assuming that when Rosh Yeshiva comes and he says, I need X number of dollars for my yeshiva, part of it is going to by...
I don't want to say that. That's being
the
mostly
million
shame around
shekel
people.
bacher. But it's a possibility, if that's who's marrying him, you're saying the million shekel dira for this boy, for this Mitsuyan million shekel boy, is coming from fundraising from these reshivas.
Yeah. I'll tell you how the average shidduch is made, like the hamonam, like not the top or the bottom, because I've married off two, and I have many friends and neighbors and family members who've married off kids. Usually what people are doing is they're coming up with around the 400,000 shekel, where they take out loans or mashkantas or whatever, and the kids take out large mashkantas. So a lot of them are buying in way out places like Afula and Ofakim, where you can get an apartment for 600,000. So if the kids get 400,000, let's say 200,000 from each set of parents, or a little bit more from the girl, a little less from the boy, because usually girls have to pay more, then they can take out a small mortgage and live. And a lot of people are doing that. That's a more and more of a trend. People who want to live in the central part of the country are going to either take on bigger mashkantas or give a little more for that down payment. That's the hamonam.
Yep.
The top tier numbers are for top tier people. As I said, Rosh Hashivas or millionaires.
Well, Mrs. Levitin, thank you very much for your time.
Sure. I hope I didn't scare you off from making Aliyah. All right.
I'll tell you a funny story. By my wedding, my shver was Rosh Hashivas Chana Levracha, and my parents, my father's Chana Levracha was a Rav, and they were both very wealthy, both my shver and my father, but they didn't have any money. Right? They were wealthy in many other things, but money wasn't one of them. So when I got married, we got married, and it was, I don't know, it was $30 a couple or $40 a couple, and I knew my parents didn't have the money. So I said, you know what? I'm having one table of friends of my bachrim or light to dance, because I didn't want them to go into Hak so that I should have a Lebedika wedding. And obviously they never bought me a deer or anything, and I ultimately went to work. But it's the whole language is speaking. It's like a foreign language. It's like hearing Hindu. But thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
We have the honor of having with us on the phone from St. Paul, Minnesota, the very famous Rav Manis Friedman. He's a shliach in Minnesota. He's the author of The Joy of Intimacy on Shalom Bais and Sneas. He's a well-known speaker and author. Welcome, Rabbi Friedman.
Thank you.
Rabbi Friedman, here's the question that we get asked about dating. People get dressed up in clothing they rarely wear to go to places where mostly they'll never go again, to talk about things that are really never going to be negeya in their lives, or rarely negeya in their lives. And after this masquerade of a number of times, they get married and supposed to live a real life. What's your opinion of our current dating system?
That's a very funny way of summarizing it. Well, first of all, we have to understand what marriage is and what dating is. So my first suggestion is that we should stop calling it dating, because we don't date. There's no such activity. In the secular world, dating is a whole lifestyle, and it can go on for years, many years, either with one person or with many people. We don't do that. We're not interested in dating. We're not interested in a good date. We're looking to get married. The current system is a little bit secularized. We get together, we meet to see if we could marry. It doesn't matter where it is, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. You're getting together to see if there's a marriage here. So we really should encourage people to not play games, to not put on a fake persona. Go and check out the other person. Don't try to make a good impression, because you don't know if you want to marry this person. He's a total stranger. So why are you trying to convince? Why are you trying to impress? Why are you trying to make a good impression? It's not necessary. This meeting should be completely selfish. You're there to check out the other party, to see if there's a marriage here.
So what would you do different? Like, would you say that girls shouldn't wear nice dresses and not wear makeup? Should boys not wear suits? Like, how would you change what is when you say the way we're doing it, it's not necessarily done properly? How would you change? What would you change?
It's really mainly the attitude. Of course, you dress respectfully. You don't come in informal clothes, but that's out of respect, not because you're trying to make an impression. So out of decency, you dress like a mensch. But the pressure that we put on people, try to talk a little more, try to make some more jokes, you're tricking him into marrying you. It's really not necessary.
So is the dating process long enough? Like, how many dates should somebody go on before they feel that, okay, this is the right person?
It's hard to put a number on it. Depends on the different people. Sometimes right after the first date, you're absolutely sure this is the person for you, which is fine. It's a big mazel. Sometimes it takes 6, 7 times. But after 6 or 7 dates, if you're still not sure, there's no reason to pursue it anymore. Nothing's going to happen on the 7th date, if we're calling it dates. So here's again the point. During the meetings, you're completely selfish. That's the whole point of the whole thing. Otherwise, you could marry somebody over the phone. You're meeting them to make sure that there is nothing about them that is painful or difficult or distasteful to you, so that you can really connect to the person. You're not looking for milas that you're going to marry. I'm going to marry him for his yichus. I'm going to marry him for his chachma. I'm going to marry him for his sense of humor. None of that. You're not marrying things. You're marrying the person. The reason you check out all these things is to make sure that none of those things will interfere, will prevent you from connecting to the person.
So then the purpose of dating is not to have a good time. The purpose of dating is to check for connection and maybe character. But coming back home and saying, I had a great time on the date, he took me to the Statue of Liberty, I'm shtickle out his parsha for whilst I'm dating myself, or wherever it may be, having a good time and where you went to why you did is not relevant. It's how did I connect to the person.
Right. And,
okay.
And you don't have to decide whether you're going to marry him. You have to decide whether you would spend another hour with him. If yes, then you meet again.
Now, at the end of this process, would you say 6 or 7 dates or 5 or 6 dates, should you be in love?
No. No, love is a very tricky thing. You can be excited, which would be good or necessary. There should be some attraction, some pull, where the heart feels attracted or interested. But I'm not sure that love is the way to measure whether you're going to marry this person, because for most people, this is the first experience. You don't even know what love feels like. So you can't really use love. A person says, I like him, I enjoy being with him, I'm not sure I love him. Why should you love him? Because he bought you a Coke? You should like him. You should want him to be your bashet. Love needs a little more basis than that.
I'll tell you a story I heard over from a Rebbe Talmud, the Rebbe Chava, Rebbe Lebaruch Finkel, Zechron Levracha. He said he was read a shidduch by Rav Shach.
Mm-hmm.
And he came from a big royal lineage in the yeshiva world. He's from here, and he met the girl. So Rav Shach asked him news. He told Rav Shach there was no real mashicha.
Mm-hmm.
There was no connection. There was no attraction. So Rav Shach said to him, "It says by Yitzchak, Vayava Yitzchak is Rivka Hela Vayaver," which is, by the way, what they teach in every seminary. This is like
right.
He said. So you see, love comes afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a shtickle schmacka, he looked at Rav Shach and he said in Yiddish, but I'll say it in English. He said, "Who says I want to get married like Yitzchak? Maybe I want to get married like Yankif, By Yaakov, the pasuk famously says, "Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel vayavel." So, but your feeling is that the idea of setting of dating or going out is to set the table and to say, can I live with this person? Can I build a life with this person? Am I attracted to this person? Rather than right now I'm either infatuated or in love. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me ask you another. Okay.
Here's the most important principle in the whole package. The marriage between a man and a woman is governed by the dynamics of a mashpia and a makabel. A woman calls me, for example, and says, I'm going out with this guy, and I don't know what to do. I can't make a decision. He's the greatest guy. He's the sweetest. He's the nicest. He's the most thoughtful and the most polite. I don't know why I'm hesitating. The answer is because he is not a mashpia to you. He's sweet, and he's gentle, and he's kind. What do you want to do, adopt him? You have to feel like he will be your mashpia, and you could devote yourself to supporting him in whatever he wants. Because then it makes you feel like a makabel, which is what the woman is supposed to be.
But Rabbi Friedman, aren't there marriages that are more, there are marriages like that are shtika like a father and a daughter, like mashpia, makabel, and then there are marriages where it's, you have many marriages where it's two partners, where they feel equal, but they complement each other. Is that something where they shouldn't get married in that case?
No, the way they complement each other has to be along this male-female dynamic. Look, the Torah says that Chava was told El Ishech Chukosech, and that was supposed to be a curse. The Medrash says, look at how the Eibishter's curses always turn into a bracha. Because the woman yearns for a husband, when men hear about it, they go running after a wife. So it gets turned around. Men, being the mashpia, find the woman's tshuka irresistible. So if a man calls up and says, I'm going out with a woman, she's fantastic, she's smart and she's capable and she runs the whole organization, the whole school, she does everything, and I don't know why I'm hesitating. I know why you're hesitating. You don't feel like a mashpia to her.
Yeah, but respectfully, Rabbi Friedman, a lot of boys are attracted to a challenge, not somebody who's going to look up to them like with adoring eyes like a puppy, but on the contrary, somebody who challenges them. And I think that there are yesh v'yesh, and even though yes, the Torah says al ishech chukasech, that's a klala. Maybe there are people, the great Balatanya writes in the Siddur, he writes that lasad lavai. The woman is going to have to be also say harei at atam mikudesh li, because in the Olam Hatikun the woman isn't equal. So maybe there are people who are post-klala. Maybe there are people who have equal marriages and they're also happy. I don't think there are many happy marriages where the woman doesn't look up to the husband, but on the contrary, the husband is attracted to the challenge. Do you not see that phenomenon ever in your life?
I know that from every marriage counseling session I've ever had, that was usually the problem. But let me explain something. It's not men and women. It's male and female. So of course there are women that are strong women and very capable women. It's not like a puppy dog. But the feminine quality that they have, which is el ishech chekosech, is a powerful vacuum that draws a man's devotion. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. So la'osed lovei, the feminine character will be even stronger. It's not that the feminine will become masculine, but that quality of being makabel will be even stronger than the force or the power of the mashpia.
Rabbi Friedman, let me ask you, during this process, this going out period, I don't know how you call it, but I want to stay consistent with you, how clear of a picture should they have of the future? Like, should they say, look, we're going to get married, we have emunah, betachin, everything will work out, or should they speak about things like, do you want to work in a few years? Do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to make money? Do you want to be a Klei Kodesh? How many children? What type of family would you like to have? How futuristic, how future-focused should be this sort of interview process? And how is it just, what type of person are you into? Can I am attracted and get along with you?
Oh, it's absolutely essential that you have a picture, you have a vision of what your future is going to be, especially for the man.
What about those who say Tamim Tiyeh, Mashem Alekecha, don't ask questions? How would you respond to that?
Don't ask questions means don't predict the future, but to not have a picture of what life is for you is modish. It's childish. So a guy particularly is asking a woman to marry him and join him in his life, and he has no idea what his life is. So how do you know, how will she know whether she wants to join you? How do you know this is the partner you need for your life when you have no picture of what your life is? And we all have a picture. You know, we start off with, I want to have the kind of family my parents had, the family I grew up in. It's a starting point. Sometimes you have more ambitious plans, but you got to have some vision. Whether it's actually going to happen, of course, you need siyata d'shmaya, it's up to the Eibishter, hashgacha pratis, and all the rest of that. But to go without a vision is reckless, and it's childish, and it doesn't help you get married, because you don't know what you're inviting the woman into, and the woman doesn't know what she's joining. But it's got to be that feeling. A woman has to find something in her husband that makes her want to be his Ezer. Then she feels like a woman. Otherwise, she takes charge because he's not doing it. So she takes on the responsibility. She starts to become his mashpia. He resents it. She doesn't feel like a woman. The whole thing just falls apart. I can't emphasize. So
you've never seen marriages that are successful where the husband is sort of more the quiet one, almost the lemala, and the woman really is take charge. You've never seen a happy marriage that way?
It does happen. It does happen, of course, but that's not a good plan.
Okay. Here's a question I got from a boy. He said, I got married and I was in yeshiva and I asked my Rosh Yeshivas. And he said it was the worst advice I ever got in my life. He said, they said to me, attraction isn't very important. It's going to happen post-marriage. He gave me 2 or 3 things and he said, the worst, and he says, I'm married and I'm miserably married. He says, I try my best, but, being married to somebody I'm not attracted to, be the physically. He said, so the question is, who should you speak to? A lot of boys go running to their Maggid Shiur. Well, does their Maggid Shiur have any, is he on the same wavelength as them? Does he have shalom bias? Does he have any idea? Is he, you may be a modern boy who's very interested in what the girl looks like, etc., and he may be, go to bed with a Michal Yisharim. Should you be asking your Rav or Rosh Yeshiva, who is the right person to ask?
Well, you ask the person you feel closest to and you feel most comfortable with, not an authority. You don't need authority here.
So it could be a friend.
Yeah, a friend with an objective view.
So does it make sense for a 22-year-old to be asking another 22-year-old if this is the right boy or girl to marry?
It makes as much sense as asking anybody else. All you can do when you ask someone else is, first of all, talk out your thoughts so that you hear what you sound like, and then to get an objective reaction. Does this sound like I'm being ridiculous? Does it sound like I know what I'm doing? So you're not looking for an expert. There are no experts. And you're not looking for authority. It's not like somebody goes to a Rebbe, and whatever the Rebbe says, he has no questions, and he'll be happy for the rest of his life out of Kabbalah's oil. We're not doing that. So going to
a Rebbe who's going to tell you who to marry sounds like a bad idea, you're saying?
No, it used to work, but we don't do that anymore. It used to work, just like your father would choose a chassan for his daughter, and they were married. They were happily married or whatever. It used to work. Today we don't do that.
Okay, so which leads me into the next thing. Parents. How involved how much should a boy or a girl be saimach on their parents? Parents push a shidduch, and often there's a conflict of interest. The parents, if they're really good parents, and I shouldn't say good parents because I'm sure there are many good parents who don't understand, but if their parents are in tune, they're looking for what's the best for the boy, the one who will have the most shaykhs to, the one who's most character matched, personality matched, etc. to the boy. But often parents have different objectives, they believe that their son is on a Ramah or their daughter should be learning or working or a chashuv shidduch, what they consider, etc. There's a conflict of interest very often. So who should a boy or a girl? You have a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old boy or a 20-year-old girl, whatever the age may be, or a 25-year-old boy or girl, or maybe age makes a difference. How much do we rely on parents, and how much should we say, listen, the Shulchan Aruch says when it comes to shidduchim, where is it? Probably in Reish Mem or Reish Mem Aleph, it says there's no chiyuv to follow parents, and I really want to do this my way, etc. How do you advise?
It's a balancing act where you want to take your parents seriously, and you want whoever you're going to marry to be appealing to the rest of your family. You want them to be a member of the family. So it is important, but it can't be the final word. The final word has to be, how do you feel about this relationship? Where is your hamshachas halev? And again, the same issue. This woman goes out with this guy. She can't find a single chesed. And they go out, and then they're not getting anywhere, so they break it up, and they don't see each other for a year, and then they find each other again, and they're going out again, and they're tortured. So I talked to the woman, and she says, he is 99% of everything I want. Just one thing missing, and I don't know what. I said, what is that one thing? And she says, he doesn't feel like a real man. That's not 1%, that's 99%.
They came to Reb Chaim Briska. And they said to him, you have all the milos of a Baal Tefillah, and our Chaim and Gimel, it brings the milos of a Baal Tefillah. He says, you're a Zakin, Talmud Chacham, you have Zikna, you have a beautiful beard, you're a tzaddik. Why can't you be our Baal Tefillah for the Yom Narayim? They said, you're missing one little Tanai. You don't have a voice. You don't have,
Yeah.
You're saying this is the same Shaila, you're saying.
Yeah. And that nobody can tell you. Why does this man feel like a man to certain women, but not to other women? The parents can't dictate this.
Let me ask you another question. Should a boy be marrying a girl firmer than them?
Halavai.
there's the famous medrash about the tzaddik and the tzaddikis who were married and then they got divorced. One married, the tzaddik married a Rishanta, an Isha Marshas, and the tzaddikis married a Rasha, and it says the Rasha became a tzaddik. He followed his wife, and the tzaddik and the tzaddik became a Rasha. Even though the Gemara Avodah Zarah seems to dispute this, according to one man the Yamar. But what's your feeling? Should a person marry up when it comes to Frumkeit, or marry parallel, or on the contrary, marry somebody who's less than him? How do you advise?
I think the best combination is that he should be a bigger Talmud Chacham and she should be a bigger Yireh Shamayim.
But then the question becomes is, at some point he says, listen, he doesn't want to get up for minyan. Does he want to be married to a mashgiach? Or alternatively, a very common thing that you have a boy, this is an astonishing issue, but I've heard this from many, the boy wants to go to work, and the wife is devastated. She thought she was marrying somebody who's going to want to learn forever, who's going to want to, or in Chabad it could be, she thought she was going to marry somebody who wanted to be a shliach, maybe he doesn't want to be, or in Hasidus, whatever circle you're in. I mean, if there's not an alignment on a frumkeit level, not to say that they're both not frum, but in sort of sheifus and frumkeit, or you're a shemayim, it could create real marital disharmony, discombobulation, disjuncture. So how would you respond to that?
Well, nobody is going to be perfectly balanced and matched. There will always be a difference in the degree of yediyah and in the degree of yiras shamayim, in the degree of mesiras nefesh, or whatever it is. They're not going to be matched. So we got to expect that right from the start. A woman who's a greater yiras shamayim than her husband doesn't mean that she becomes the policeman. That's a whole different issue. So the real question is, they're not going to be matched. How are they going to get along? If she is more yiras shamayim, how should she handle it? If she's disappointed in her husband, what should she do? Bother him? Pester him? Give him musar?
What should she do? Let's talk about that for a minute. You have a wife. She went to Bais Yaakov. The boy went to any wonderful yeshiva, and he doesn't want to get up for davening in the morning. He just doesn't, and it bothers the wife very much. Or it could be the other way around. The woman wants to wear something that the husband thinks is not sneistic. There are so many. How when there are separations in frumkeit, how do we deal with it? As the author of a sefer on Shalom Bais, what do you advise?
So the first thing is, don't be a tzaddik on somebody else's expense. In other words,
wait, but respectfully, Rabbi, let's go past that. When the husband isn't getting up for davening, I'm not being a tzaddikis at his expense. It changes the avirah in the house. The husband never opens a sefer. It changes the avirah in the house. If the wife wants to walk around dressed in an oifen loy tzanua, this has a direct impact on the bias, be they children, be they not children. So let's go beyond being a tzaddik on somebody else's cheshbon. Let's talk about it does shter the avirah.
Of course it does. I'm not saying that the issue is not an important issue. The question is, when there are issues, and whether it's in Yiddishkeit or in finances or in chinuch, when there are issues, how do you go about it? So the woman is more of a yiras shamayim, and she really wants her husband to get up and go to daven. So what should she do about it? Lose respect for him? So her job is to support him in the way that he wants to go. And by doing that, he will want to please her more. So over time, he will find himself getting up and going to shul. A woman's effect on her husband is subtle, it's slow, and it's real. But by her being the yiras shamayim, not by her being the mashpia or the policeman. So what I would advise the woman is, maintain respect for your husband. He is your husband, and Olam Hazeh, and Olam Haba. This is real. So if you're patient, and if you don't give up, he will come around. Like the Gemara says, the woman will influence her husband not by screaming and carrying on, just by being a good wife.
Rabbi Friedman, I think you're very wise. Can I add a different possibility?
Yeah.
And is it possible that people have different connections with their Rabbi Shalom? So whereas to the husband, to the wife, her idea of what your connection to Kaviyachal should be by going to Minyan. And you have a husband who finds it hard to go every day to Minyan or every tefillah, and he says, my connection to the Rabbi Shalom may be through learning, or maybe through Hasidus, or maybe through Chesed, or maybe so. Allow me my connection to the Rabbi Shalom. Respect the fact that we could have different ways to connect to spirituality and to Kaviyachal.
That is very smart and very true. Absolutely. Let me bring in another thought. The Mishnah says, "Al tiyu ka'avodim hamisham shemesarav al manas lekabel pras." And then, for the rest of Pirkei Avos, there's a constant mention of schar. Don't worry, you'll get schar. Lefum tzayra agra. There is schar waiting for you. You just said you shouldn't do it for the schar. So why does it go back to almost, it sounds like, enticing you with the schar when you're not supposed to do it for the schar? And also, the whole idea itself, what do you mean don't do it for the schar? What am I doing it for? Because I'm told? That's good for a child. But what is, and why the mashal? Why do you have to have a mashal of a Rav, and you're meshamish the Rav, you're an Eved? Just say, don't do mitzvahs for the schar.
Right.
So obviously, the point of it is, if the Rav doesn't exist, if you're not doing it for someone, then of course you're doing it for a schar. Why else would you be doing it? But if there's a Eved, and there's a Rav, and the Eved adores the Rav, and he can do something for the Rav, he doesn't need any more schar than that. So that's why he uses the mashal of an Eved and a Rav. But let's say the Eved works for the Rav without thinking of a reward, and then finds out that whatever he did for the Rav never needed it. It doesn't mean anything to him. Then he would be devastated. So let's apply this to the Eibishter and to our marriage. If you say to the Eibishter, I will serve you, I will do mitzvahs, I will be frum, because I want to get to Gan Eden. That's schar. What you're actually saying, if you stop and think about it, what you're actually saying is, I want Gan Eden. If I could get Gan Eden without you, I would be perfectly happy. But since you have the key to Gan Eden, so I unfortunately have to listen to you and put up with you, but if I could get to Gan Eden without all this, it would be even better. Now imagine a man says to a woman, I want to marry you because you're rich. What he's actually saying is, I want to marry the money. If I could get the money without marrying you, I'd be even happier. But
like you say in Dayenu, but somebody touched in Dayenu once. He said, "Ilu karalanu yos hayam, ilu nasalanu es mamayim, v'le karalanu es hayamsef Dayenu." It says, "Kasha zivuga mishaladam kekriyas yamsef." He said, "Ilu nasalanu mamayim, v'le karalanu es hayam Dayenu."
Right, right. Yeah, and it's such an insult, you know. So what's wrong with a man saying, "I want to marry you because you're rich"? What's so terrible? What's terrible is he's actually admitting, I don't really want to marry you. I just want to get to the money. But if what it takes to get to the money is marrying you, okay, so I'll marry you. So not to do a mitzvah for the schar is like, you don't say to the Eibishter, I want the schar. If I could get it for free, it would be perfect. But since I'm not going to get it for free, so it's so ugly. So the first Perek in Pirkei Avos needs to tell us, don't do that. What you want is a connection to the Rav. How do you make a connection? You do what the Rav needs. You do what the Rav wants. And if you can satisfy something in the Rav, that is the biggest schar. You don't need any more than that. And the same is true with a marriage. We're not going into the marriage to become perfect. My wife will make me perfect. My husband will make me perfect because he'll give me this, he'll give me that, she'll give me. This is not a marriage. You're marrying the money, or the service, or the yichus, You're supposed to marry the person. So, if a couple see that they have differences, they have to remind themselves, we are married to each other, not to these differences. I'm not married to your frumkeit, I'm not married to your tzidkes, I'm not married to your yichus, and I'm not married to your wealth. I'm married to you. And my devotion is to you. And yes, I wish you were more of a Yireh Shamayim. I wish you went to the minyan. I wish you were a little more tznius. It's going to happen because you're devoted to each other, not because you're devoted to this cause.
What about, Rabbi Friedman, what do you say about showing pictures? There are people, they say, let's show a picture. Can I see a picture before the date? What do you think of that?
There's a good joke about that. Somebody asked a big frum yid to send a picture of his daughter. And he said, "Ein eisen came bim kaimenu."
Right.
So
what do you say?
It's silly. The picture is not meila, not ma'arid. It doesn't help. It's misleading. A picture can be, can do the justice to the person, or it can be. You can't tell from a picture.
So, are you opposed to it? If somebody says, I'll go out if you show me a picture. Would you or wouldn't you send it?
It depends on how attractive the shidduch is. If he's worth it, okay, fine, send a picture. But to make it a minhag Yisrael, I don't.
You're opposed to it.
Yeah.
Rabbi Friedman, thank you very much for your divrei Torah and your wise advice.
It's a pleasure.
Cool.
We should all have happy, healthy marriages.
Amen.
Yeah.
Can I add on to that, Rabbi Friedman?
Yeah.
I would say we should all create happy marriages.
Oh.
Because I personally believe that for the most part it's biyadenu.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. Cool.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We have on the phone with us Michal Friedman, who's a licensed clinical social worker, a graduate of Fordham and NYU. She's featured on OK Clarity, which is a website dedicated to mental health in the Frum community. Originally from Baltimore, went to Bais Yaakov. Welcome, Ms. Friedman.
Thank you.
So, do you think that the seminaries and the yeshivas are teaching boys and girls what they need to know for marriage? Or alternatively, why blame it on the seminaries and yeshivas? You think today's parents are adequately, preparing their children for marriage?
My short answer is no. I think that in today's day and age, when you speak to principals of schools, they will tell you that they feel a lot of the parenting burden is on them, more so today than a few decades ago. So, of course, in the area of preparation for marriage, I think a lot of parents, they don't think that high school or seminary or yeshiva is a time to talk about those kinds of things, so they decide to wait, and that kind of works in their favor. Sometimes it could be awkward to bring up certain types of conversations, and they kind of put the onus on the schools or yeshivas or chassan teachers, college teachers, and they hold off as much as they can.
So if you could wave a magic wand and improve this, what would you do?
That's a great question. I'm very passionate about education when it comes especially to matters of intimacy. I think that in today's society, because unfortunately it is so sexualized, that we cannot put the same premium on modesty as we used to. I think that, tznius is such an important part of Orthodox culture, but I think that we're hurting more than helping young adults when we don't talk about matters of intimacy. So I think, having small classes with skilled and trained teachers or therapists, kind of giving basic information, obviously not too much information, and it has to be age appropriate, but giving some education and information over to, I would say, even teenagers, would do a great good to our world.
Well, I assume that most adults who get married today pretty much know everything you need to know about intimacy. So why would training them at a younger age be of any assistance?
That's also a good question. I would say that, from people that I spoke to, whether professionally or personally, the average person has watched some movies or, have gone to the mall. They've seen the posters and the pictures and have heard, radio songs. So they get the basic gist of sexuality. But it's a very, very different thing to know something than practice it. And I've had even people in the medical field who are from and grew up, somewhat exposed, call me panicking when they were engaged or, like right after they got married, asking for some guidance because we may understand a little bit, but then when we're practicing it, we might not know, like, A, what our rights are, B, what's normal. That's a big question I get. Am I normal? And C, how to grow that and develop that area of life just like any other part of the relationship.
Don't these sound like very time-specific questions? Why would we want to teach this to kids at a younger age?
So I obviously wouldn't, go into a discussion about the very specifics, but what I would do is, even in middle school when, a young girl is going through puberty and a young boy is going through puberty, to talk to them about this part of them that is slowly forming and to normalize it, and to talk about what that means. You can use spirituality in that class, but to explain that it's a normal thing. I think a lot of kids, these parts of them, are obviously developing and they learn, okay, this is how I take care of this or this is how I take care of that, but then they don't understand it in the bigger context of, I'm forming my sexuality. And so I think for them to know that they're normal and that it's okay and not to feel weird and awkward. And, I tell parents when they ask me, how do I talk to my kids about this? I say, it's okay if you blush. I blush sometimes in session, and that doesn't mean I think what's being discussed is strange or weird. It's just sometimes it could be awkward or sometimes, we're just programmed to, be shy about these things. So it's okay, but it needs to be discussed. Another part that I'm very passionate about teaching younger people is about, understanding that you have a right to say no to things. So that doesn't have to necessarily be in the context of sex, but it can still be applied to sex and be taught that it is applied to sex. So if someone is giving you a hug and you don't want it or you don't like it, you can say, I don't want the hug, thank you anyway. And the one other piece is learning how to be mindful and present. A lot of times, we're taught a virtue of like not delving too much into pleasure in other contexts. But I think teaching kids and adolescents that pleasure is actually a good thing. God gave us the ability to enjoy pleasure. And even from a religious perspective, our job is to fully enjoy the pleasure that God gave us, and we elevate it through spirituality. But that's the ultimate way of enjoying the pleasure. It's about enjoying the pleasure and teaching kids to be mindful of that. So, you get a piece of chocolate, you say a bracha with kavana, and then you really enjoy that piece of chocolate. And I encourage parents to even do this with their little kids, like 7-year-olds, and say, how good was that chocolate? Wasn't that delicious? And, and really bring that concept to them that we can really enjoy and that it's not a evil thing. We could just kind of really sit in that pleasure.
So do you find that marriages are significantly impacted by the lack of education?
So, I forgot where I heard this. I know it was at the Nefesh conference this past year, where, I think the majority of people are okay. Do they have the best sex lives? No, but they have decent sex lives. They're happy. They're okay. They're fine. I think that we're getting more people in therapy in general because it's, thank God, becoming less stigmatized. I think that we've moved enough away from just trying to survive, different things, whether it's poverty or war, and we're moving towards, concepts of like self-actualization, and I'm working on myself. I'm trying to figure out my topkin in life. We have more time to think and to grow in those more cerebral kind of ways. So I think people are showing up more into therapy. And because our society is so sexualized and because it's thankfully becoming less stigmatized, therapy is something that people want to utilize in order to improve their sex lives. You watch a video and you see people are having, seeming like the times of their lives, and they're thinking, my experience isn't like that. Am I normal? And so, people want to kind of make sure that what they're doing is okay. But I think that it's not the majority of people. I think the majority of people are doing okay.
Okay, in closing, is there any message that you would like to impart to our audience?
I think it's just, any feeling is okay. I think what I would say is, especially for parents, that it's our job as parents to help our children develop in the healthiest and happiest ways possible. And we raise children to be solid adults who give back to our communities. And part of making an adult is to teach them about sexuality. It's no one else's job except for a parent. And I think that you can use a spiritual approach. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to consult a therapist or a Rav to know the best way to go about teaching your children. But I think if I had to impart one message, it would be to talk to your kids, no matter how awkward it is. Keep the lines of communication open. It's not just one conversation. That's many, many conversations as they continue to grow and develop at their own pace. You're going to have many, many conversations with your children, and I think that's going to help them understand sexuality in a way that's not scary or abnormal. It will be something that they can look forward to in the right time.
Yeah, and let me add on, the Gemara says Rav Kahana, who hid under the bed of his Rebbe Rav, while he was in relationship with his wife, to find out exactly what to do and not to do. So you see that Chazal were very, open and honest about this, as opposed to, keeping things secret and furtive about it.
Yes, exactly. I think, the Gemara, if we fully learned every single part of it, we would find that it's redolent with examples and stories and anecdotes of discussion about sexuality. I think that we've become more scared to really delve into those things, but it's there, and it's probably one of the biggest things about being a Jewish person is to understand it. I mean, we say this is not really, I don't think, founded on halacha. I'm not a halachic expert, but we say that how do you know if someone's from? They keep kosher, they keep Shabbos, and they keep Taharas Mishpacha. So that's such a big cornerstone of what it means to be a religious person. And there's plenty of places in Torah to find it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
We now go back to Aharon, Rabbi, and Sorcher, and he will speak about the struggles of today's generation in marriage, struggles that maybe prior generations hadn't have, maybe the attacks on the institution of marriage. Let's continue the conversation. Rabbi, are we preparing children for marriage? We have a record number of divorces. Somebody told me, in a very well-known community, lots of young couples, there's literally 100 divorces there were in the last year. Are we preparing our children? I mean,
in my humble opinion, the problem isn't preparing specifically for marriage.
Okay.
The problem is, the question is, people have to be prepared for life, and that applies to many, many things. I don't think there's a lack of specific preparation for marriage. I don't think that's the problem, generally speaking. But I do think that sometimes people, and it's a general thing. I'm saying people have to. The problem is in the chinuch, and the problem could be in the people themselves. But the idea is that in order to succeed in marriage, like in anything else, you have to have seichel, and you have to have good midas. And if there is a lack of seichel or a lack of good midas, there might be different causes for it. Maybe the internet, the changes in society by the internet might have something to do with it. The society definitely changed in the last 10, 15 years because we're much, much more exposed than we used to be, and the way of thinking changed to conform.
And how did that change things? I imagine as a Rav, you get to see a fair amount of Shalom Bais issues.
And there are a number of things, but the main idea is, in order to succeed in anything, whether it's marriage, whether it's children, whether it's Avodas Hashem, whether it's business, whether it's financially, in order to succeed, it's a career. You need seichel, and you also need good midas. If people are compulsive and they act compulsively, if people aren't introspective and they are superficial and they take things at face value and they're not looking for the emes and for the real nakuda to understand things correctly. And if people have gaiva, they're narcissistic, they're arrogant, whatever it is, that's very, very detrimental to almost everything, and especially in marriage. I don't think it's training on explaining to the young people the dynamics of marriage and the particular skills they would need for marriage is productive. If someone has seichel and has good midas, then he'll figure it out. If someone does not have seichel or does not have good midas, the training won't really help. It has its place. It does have, but that's not the nakuda. The parents and teachers and Rabbi and that should, and of course they always should. They know they should. They have to work hard. That the children should be Bais and Bali Midas.
So, Rabbi Aharon, why would you say the increase in divorce? And I don't know if you see it in Detroit at all, if you've come across it in Incorrect. But when I was growing up, it was very uncommon. Today, sadly, it's become very common. What would you attribute it to?
It's hard to know. It's very hard to give a single factor, and when you do, it's very hard to know if you're right. It's very easy to say a svara, but whether the svara is actually right is like some people say a svara, that we live in a disposable generation, and people therefore think marriages are disposable. It's a svara. It's probably 100% wrong, but you know what I'm saying. It's easy to say svaras. I don't know, and I don't think it's particularly important to understand. If you could understand things and negative trends or whatever it is, to fight with them it's okay. But it's very, very hard to factor in. I think the effect of society on us, and I think it's inevitable. I don't know how it could be counteracted. I don't think it could be, certainly not directly counteracted, but the effects, there was the older idea, 50 years ago, 75 years ago, and that the idea that marriages have to be permanent, and even the idea, which might be a controversial idea, that the wife has to be subservient to the husband, whether it's true or not, it was accepted among the general society very much. And therefore, that definitely was able to stop conflicts from getting very out of hand if there's a certain amount of subservience to the wife to the husband. Now, maybe it's not practical, but that's what happened then. Today, there's no such thing. Today, society considers the wife completely equal to the husband, and also today, people look at marriage. Society looks at marriage like, if it works, fine. If not, just shred it. So that definitely, I think, is a factor which definitely a significant factor in the increase of divorces. But I'm not quite sure how to counteract that. The society is still going to say that, and in a certain respect, it's you can't fight it directly, because it could be their old idea of the wife being subservient also was taken.
Rabbi Aharon, to drive a car, you need a license, right? Mm-hmm. To become a Rav, you need smicha. Mm-hmm. To become a social worker, you need an LCSW. Mm-hmm. To become work in a hair salon, you need a license, right? Mm-hmm. And we put people into marriage after a half an hour chas and shmooze. I don't know, the girl probably gets the same. Why do we treat marriage with, we don't treat it with the same respect we give a driving license?
Listen, driving needs a certain specific set of skills, and so does hairdressing, etc., that most people don't have. By marriage, the way Hashem made the world is that even though marriage does need specific skills, but they're not something which could be learned from a book and could be taught. There's something which every person is supposed to and has to work out on their own. And the point is another thing. If you have somebody that can't drive, so that's it. He doesn't get a license. If you have someone that inherently is going to have difficulties with marriage, but that's him, right? And like I told you, it's not like you could give him a 2-hour course and then he got it.
Well, we sent somebody to driving. I mean, hello, I took 6 driving lessons.
The one who has the difficulty with marriage is like the guy who, after the driving lesson, still can't drive. He doesn't get his license.
Well, Rabbi, we would agree that there are people who can't get a driving license even after many, many driving lessons, right?
Right.
But we would also agree that to the majority of people, the 6 or 7 driving lessons that they get substantially help them to be able to drive. So given the fact
not only substantially help them, they wouldn't be able to do it.
Right. So given the fact that there are so many divorces today, right, and that boys and girls are, for the most part, certainly in the Haredi community, separated from a very young age, from first grade, right, and that their interaction and that marriage does require a set of tools, and the proof is the amount, wouldn't it make sense to say if driving you could give you 6 lessons, and driving is important, marriage and raising children, which is far more important, should at least, being that we're seeing such a, and you're right that it's a 90-10 as far as marriage and divorce, but the trend is alarming. When the trend goes from 3% to 10%, I mean, we can infer that maybe in 10 or 15 years it'll be 20%. So shouldn't we say we should grab that trend by the horns and figure out, do a deep dive into what the issues are, and maybe do driving lessons for marriage?
I can only tell you my opinion. My opinion is that what a person gets from driving lessons, as far as driving, he'll be able to easily get that himself as far as marriage. But the problem is that even with understanding the marriage, even with knowing in seichel what to do, but having the knowledge of what to do, the problem is using your intuitive reasoning and your good midas, and that's the problem. And guidance will help very, very little for it. Courses and preparation for marriage would help very, very little for that.
But don't people model? Don't boys model their parents? Girls marry their mothers. We have many people who come from marriages that are somewhat dysfunctional. According to psychologists, 60% of marriages are unhappy. Is it possible that they're coming into marriage modeling behavior which is inherently unhealthy? Because that's what you call intuitively. That's what they were brought up to admire. They were taught to admire their fathers and their mothers. Somebody has to say, no, that's not normal behavior.
Courses won't help for that. Okay. If they have the seichel and the midas, they'll understand it, and if they don't, courses won't help. Courses sometimes have a very detrimental effect, because very often the course teaches you, there's an underlying message in the course very often, which is you don't know anything about marriage and you can't know. And the only thing you can know about marriage is what I'm teaching you. Now, that's not said explicitly, but that is the message that's very often underlining the course.
But Rabbi, this is the solution.
Internalizes that message.
I understand.
When a person says that message, it becomes worse, not better.
Rabbi, but the solution to bad education,
things the way the course works,
right,
and not realizing that this is stupid.
Right.
And either sometimes the instructor is stupid, and he's giving the wrong advice.
Rabbi,
sometimes
is the solution
the instructor is giving the right advice, he's not explaining it well. And
Rabbi,
sometimes he's giving the right advice and explaining it well, but it's not for your situation. And if you don't teach someone that, no, you could do it, you don't need me, you're the one who could do it, you're the one who could figure this out, you're the one who could work this out, you have the power, and don't try to get a marriage which is normal and typical and that. You're unique. Do things that work for you. And that is the best message that you could give them. And the courses give them the opposite message.
But Rabbi, is the solution to bad education no education, or is the solution to bad education better education?
It's not bad education.
Well,
it's inherent.
If the course is a bad course, let's get a better course.
It's inherent. When you tell someone you have a course, you have a responsibility, he has to talk. So he's going to have to tell them what marriage is. And that alone is giving them an underlying message that you can't do it.
Okay.
I'll give you a good analogy for this if you have time. Yeah. There was somebody that I knew, he's no longer alive. He used to give courses in Shita, and he would teach someone how to sharpen the knife perfectly in a day, and in an hour. The guy could take a course in an hour and know how to sharpen a knife perfectly, and I've seen that. And everyone else makes fun of him because everyone knows that it takes 3 months or 5 months or 8 months to be able to learn how to sharpen a knife properly. How do you manage it in a day? Didn't make sense. So I figured out why. There was one other reason, because he taught technique and no one else did. But I think the main reason was everyone else, when the person comes to learn, he gets the message very, very clearly. This is extremely hard, and it's going to take you a long time to master it. That's the message he gets very, very clearly again and again. And that's what happens. This fellow, when the student comes, he says it's extremely easy, and you're going to get it within 2 hours. They internalize that message, and they get it. And that's what we have to tell our children about marriage. There's nothing complicated. It's something that you could do. But you got to use your seichel, and you got to have good midas, and then you'll be fine. And you got to know when to be mevater, and you got to know when to use your seichel. And you have to know that, not everything is going to go. You have to be patient. You need self-honest. You need the regular life skills. You need self-honest, and you need care, and you need love, and you need a lot of things. And these are things that we always taught you. And you just got to apply them, and it'll work. But if you tell them, no, you don't know anything about marriage, let me teach it to you. Sometimes your wife is going to come home like this, and she's going to say this. Now you're going to think that. And therefore, you have to realize, no, you have to think that. It doesn't work. And all it does is it takes away their power. It makes them more zombie-like and more by rote, and it doesn't. It harms. Its harm is much more than its help.
Rabbi Aharon, you mentioned before that the internet has had an effect on marriage. How do you see that as a Rav in dealing with couples?
I think it's the internet generation, which is nothing really we could do to combat. Even if someone never goes on the internet, he's still living in the society. And the internet teaches people to be very superficial. The constant barrage of information, this way, that way, constant opinions, people constantly voicing their opinions. Anyone voices their opinions. And what Gemara teaches you a lot is, and I have experience with people who I introduced them to Gemara at an adult age, and they were all fascinated that Gemara here is not to teach you the halacha, or that the Gemara is here to teach you how to think. Even simple Gemara Rashi teaches you how to think. And certainly when you do it, it teaches you how to think deeply. It teaches you how to understand, how to put everything in its proper place, how to make hagdaros and that. The internet teaches the opposite. The internet and the media and our exposure to it, much, much more exposed than we used to be. We're much more, because of the exposure of the internet, so everyone just gets exposed altogether. And there's constantly svaris and biyunim going on, and we're taught to think superficially. And that's how the generation is. And it's very hard then for a person who has to approach a nuanced situation like marriage that's very, very nuanced and requires depth, and that it's much harder for him to navigate it.
Rabbi Aharon, do you think that we had a Rosh Yeshiva on from Eretz Yisrael, and he said that he said it was the majority of the boys before marriage are exposed to pornography, even if, by accident, casually, etc. Do you think that's having an effect on marriages?
I don't know if it's having an effect on marriage. If the person does become addicted to porn, and porn becomes a part of his daily life, there's no question that could wreak havoc in his marriage, particularly if his wife will find out. But just exposure to porn, which is wrong, and it's an aveira, and it's no good for the kedusha, but I do not know if that has any effect at all on the success of the marriage.
So, Rabbi Aharon, in closing, do you think that the institution of marriage, in other words, I remember my father, Zechron Levracha, told me over, he says, when you get married, you say, Arei Mukadeshes li Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, Rabbi Yonis and Steif told him, went into him when he was a chassan. So he asked him, why do you say Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael? Why don't you say, you're eating matzah Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael, you're blowing shofar Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael? So Rabbi Yonis and Steif said, because what does it say by Moshe v'Yisrael? Arboim shana akut b'dair. For 40 years mit Aharon geschlagt. Right?
Mm-hmm.
For 40 years they fought. Did he ever say, I'm leaving? I'm checking out? You never say, I'm checking. Moshe didn't check out, right? Mm-hmm. He said, Fakert. They want to check out. If he wants to, Ranshon wants them to check out, right? So he said, Kedas Moshe Yisrael. Just like Moshe didn't check out after 40 years of the Harum Krigan, the same thing. Marriage is inviolate, right?
Right.
Do you feel that the institution of marriage in America has lost some of its gravitas, and it's seen as, if we stay married, fine. If we don't, do you find that is under attack in America?
Perhaps. You know what I'm saying? But it does make sense. It does seem that way. But, the idea, you know what I'm saying, but by just telling people that, no, marriage is for keeps, it doesn't help. If it's true, these things come, they're very, very inborn, they're very internalized, they come from society, and no amount of education could really change an attitude. But, I definitely think if a person somehow gets through, inspiration could do it. I know of somebody that would always think to himself that as soon as the kids get older, I'm out of here. And then one time he had an epiphany that, no, I'm not out of here. Even when the kids get older, I'm going to stick it out till the grave. And that improved his marriage. Someone who I was in contact with who would tell me things. And it came from within. Somehow, all of a sudden, he got that resolve. It was a fantasy anyway. I don't think it was probably true. His marriage wasn't bad. But, every marriage, especially when there's a lot of children, could have stresses, could have, and there were things that were bothering him. And when things would go wrong, that was the thought that would come to his head. When the kids get older, we're out. But when he changed it and he said, no, I'm not leaving no matter what, it made a big difference. It made a big difference in his day-to-day life. Even never mind when the kids get older, which they're already, but it made a difference. Yeah. So, yeah.
Rabbi Aharon, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Oh, have a good day.